Hey folks, we're right at 1:30. We've still got a couple of other people who are joining in right now, so we're going to give them just a minute or two to get connected, and then we will get started. Thanks. We've still got some folks who are joining in. They'll catch up with us once they get connected, I guess. But we do have a pretty full house today on the webinar. I'll try to have some time at the end for questions and answers if there are any, but I'm also going to provide you my contact information so that if you do have any questions when we get done, you can reach out to me directly, and I will help you get started. I appreciate everybody attending. Like I said, we do have a pretty packed house on the webinar today, so that's a good thing. We're going to be talking a little bit about disaster recovery and can you continue operating your business in the face of disaster? What are some things that you need to know so that when disaster strikes, you can continue business as usual when that happens? And you know, where we're located, and we've got people on the webinar from all over, but here we're located in Western Kentucky, and we think that we're not, we're not really much in a disaster area. We're not affected by hurricanes, for example, but all you have to do is look at the tornado that hit Brookport, Illinois, or the ice storm of 2009, and the fact that we're on the New Madrid fault line, and you're pretty quick to realize that we actually do have a number of disasters that can possibly happen in this area. Plus, there's some other things, too, that may not be a natural disaster, but could be an equipment disaster, a computer disaster, that kind of thing. So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. Might be just under an hour, so we might have a little bit of time for questions and answers if you have any, but like I said, I will be providing my contact information at the end so you can reach out to me and my team at any time, and we will help you, be glad to help you as we are able to. What we're going to hopefully be able to take away today is how that you can make sure that your data, your computer data, is available to you in the event of a catastrophe, some plans that you need to put in place so that you can continue operations during a disaster. You still got to make money. You still have to have money coming in during a disaster, and really business has to continue as normal. How you can get prepared and what are some of the preparedness steps that you need to take that are really easy and free. It just takes some time and some thinking in order to get that going. And also, why fire drills are so important for your organization. And I use the word fire drills a little tongue-in-cheek there. You think of fire drills like you have in school, but you need to really test your disaster preparedness and see, what's going to happen to you, what's going to happen to your business when disaster strikes, because it will happen at some point in time. Like I mentioned, we have the Brookport tornado. We have things like the ice storm, and then we have things like lightning and equipment disasters. So we want to look at, what exactly is a disaster, and what's a disaster in your business. Equipment failure, that's the #1 disaster that there is. It's the #1 disaster that we see. A computer dies. You use that computer to maintain records. You use that computer to do any kind of bookkeeping. You use that computer to run your business. That really is the #1 disaster that we see, and we see on a regular basis. But you also have natural disasters, tornadoes, and we are on a fault line. Hopefully that it never happens, but there were a couple of earthquakes in southern Illinois earlier this week, very minor, I think 2 or 2.1 on the Richter scale, but regardless, that's a possibility. Acts of God, what's going to happen if your building burns down? What's going to happen if you have an electrical short and you're out of the office? It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you go in the morning and your office is no longer there. Those acts of God are present everywhere you go, and that's something you definitely need to plan for. And something a lot of people don't think about, what about the death of key personnel in your business? That's a really big thing, and that's something that most people just totally leave out of their disaster preparedness planning and, their planning of what they're going to do should something happen. It's a really big deal, though, and we'll get into in a little while why you need to think about it. You also have what other, you really have to think a disaster is really whatever situation that could happen that would prevent you from being able to conduct your normal business and prevent you from being able to service those who use your services. And even a little further than that, prevent you from generating income, sending out bills, getting checks in, recording those checks, et cetera, et cetera. So a business disaster really could be a number of things, but anything that's going to prevent you from conducting business as normal, that's really what a business disaster is considered. Equipment failure. Like we said, equipment failure is the number one thing that we see and the number one disaster that most people have to deal with. So what can you do to hopefully prevent and save some of that disaster happening should you have equipment failure? Should lightning strike your building and computers won't come on? That kind of thing. Well, a couple of different things. Number one, if you have a server in your office, you really need to make sure you're saving your data to the server, not on your computer. People get used to saving their data into their My Documents folder. You wouldn't believe the amount of people we see who use their desktop as a filing system, and they save all of their documents, all of their things out on the desktop. Well, that doesn't help any that your stuff is saved in your My Documents folder or that your stuff is saved on your desktop. When your computer won't come on, you get that burning electrical smell, that kind of thing. So if you have a server in your office, you want to make sure that you save your data to the server. A couple of reasons for that. Typically, servers are more robust. They have multiple hard drives in them, so if a hard drive dies, not the end of the world. You continue going on normal, that kind of thing. You also need to maintain up-to-date hardware with warranties. Now, this is the one case that an extended warranty is always your friend. There's a lot of debate, especially with electronics, TVs, that kind of thing, is getting that extended warranty a scam. Well, that's to be determined. If your TV doesn't come on, is it worth you paying the extra $150 for the extended protection plan? I don't know. It's definitely worth the extended warranty to know that should something happen to your computer, that the manufacturer or your IT support company is going to be able to have it replaced within 24 hours or within the next business day, that kind of thing. The average lifespan of computers nowadays is about 5 years, and so you can actually get computers that have 5-year warranties. We want to look at a minimum of having a 3-year next business day warranty, but it's really important to maintain up-to-date hardware. The computers that fail most often are usually the oldest computers. Something else you need to plan and think about is the location of your equipment. In a lot of common pitfalls that we see, people keep computers, and especially server equipment, but even your desktop computer that you use at work every day, or that you even may have at home, who knows. A lot of people keep those, for instance, on the floor. Well, what happens when you have a water leak? Your water, it's the gravity act, and water is going to be on the ground. No, you don't want your computers on the floor. That's just a very common pitfall. We see that a lot. It's something that's really easy to fix. If nothing else, get a milk crate. Get something to get it off the floor. Get it up on your desk, whatever the case may be. You wouldn't believe the amount of server closets that we work in that were just terribly planned out that have a water heater in the same room as all of their network equipment, their servers, that kind of thing. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. You know, when you're building a new building, if you're ever building a new building, you really want to get an IT provider, get SmartPath, get whoever involved in that stage, because there are some things that you just don't want to do. You don't need to have sprinkler heads in your server closet, for example. So those are a couple of the things that we see that are pitfalls just with locations of equipment. And the other thing is you need to be prepared to know where to get equipment from should something happen. Okay, so computer does die, building does burn down, whatever the case may be. Where can you go the next day to at least buy a computer, get your data back so that you can get back to normal? You know, you need to have that planned out. Does your IT provider keep loaner computers? We do that for our clients. That's something to check into. If not, you need to know where you can go and buy a computer, buy a cheap computer, whatever the case may be, buy something to get back operational. So that's really important to know as well. You know, the one thing that we preach to everybody and that we see all the time is backup, 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 backup. And there are a couple of different types of backup. We're going to go into that, and, you know, what's best for you, I can't tell you. It differs with every situation. But we're going to talk about the different types of backup and, you know, what some of the problems with them are, that kind of thing, so you can make the choice that's best for you. The type of backup that's most common and that we see a lot used to be tapes. Tapes have kind of gone by the wayside, and a lot of people now will back up onto either USB jump drives or USB hard drives. A couple of things there, definitely not a bad idea. You have to remember to do it. We see that all the time. People forget to back their stuff up. You know, it gets to be the end of the day. They want to go home, and taking that backup that takes 25 minutes to do or half an hour to do or longer, it just gets neglected. I mean, that is what it is. You also got to remember that any kind of backup method that you're using with USB drives, hard drives, that kind of thing, all of those things do eventually fail. I mean, they have a 100% failure rate. They are not going to last forever. One thing that a lot of people don't think about, though, and we actually see this quite a bit, is you have a really big danger of theft, and it's a huge responsibility for whoever's doing your backup in taking that data home with them. You know, USB drives and USB hard drives, everybody knows what they are. Kids know that they can use them to save their music on, save their pictures on. They get stolen. They do. People can be just religious about conducting their backup every day, changing that drive out, you know, having 2 or 3 USB drives that they back up to. So what happens, though, when that jump drive or that USB hard drive gets stolen? Well, let's take that a bit further. What if you, for instance, use QuickBooks and you're doing payroll out of that? And so you've backed up your QuickBooks file and that USB drive gets stolen. Well, suddenly, whoever has stole your USB drive has access to all of your employee data, including their Social Security numbers. Huge, huge problem, and puts you as an employer into a situation where you're having to spend a whole lot of money to do things like buy credit protection for your employees, notify people, you know, notify your clients perhaps if you have any of their confidential information stored, that kind of thing. So that's something you really want to be concerned about if you are using a USB drive or a hard drive to back up. Also, those kind of backups typically only happen once a day, either maybe when you leave work or they happen automatically at night. That doesn't really protect you should something happen 7 hours into the workday. Do you really want to go back to the backup that you had last night? Well, it's a whole lot better than not having a backup period, but you're going to have to recreate a whole day's worth of work. And really, we see this all the time. If you're just considering time to recover, it's going to take at least 8 hours. That's a minimum after you've got new hardware in place. So, you know, your server dies, computer dies, whatever the case may be. You're going to, have to spend at least a day, 2 or 3 days, getting replacement hardware, finding your software to reinstall, et cetera, and then it's going to take at least 8 hours to get your stuff all back up, back operational. So that's a long time to be down. I mean, that's a long time to not be able to do work. When you translate that into payroll costs, when you add in the burden of payroll taxes, workers' comp, insurance, et cetera, suddenly you realize that that is not cheap whatsoever. Another type of backup is online backup. That's very common nowadays. Cloud backup, it's sometimes called. A lot of advantages to online backup. It really is safe and secure. You know, we get a lot of questions. Well, I don't know who has my data. I don't feel comfortable sending my data out to a data center where I don't know who has access to it every night. Well, that's not really something you have to worry about with online backup. The way that online backup works is before the data leaves your office or your computer, it gets encrypted. It gets scrambled. So all that is stored up in the cloud is really a bunch of gobbledygook. It's jumbled mess. You would have to have a password in order to decrypt that, put all the data back so that you could, for instance, see your Word document or open your QuickBooks file, et cetera, et cetera. Online backup's great because you don't have to have anybody take the responsibility for backing it up, to remember to do it, what happens when they go on vacation and it doesn't happen for a week, et cetera, et cetera. But one downside of online backup is it can take a really long time to recover. Depending on your amount of data, it could take days or weeks to get your data back because literally you have to download it from the source that it's backed up at. And depending on how fast your internet is and how much data you have, well, it could take you hours to download it. It could take you days to download it. In some situations, it could take you weeks to download it. So that's, you know, that's something that you have to consider. The best type of backup that there is available right now in the year 2015 is what's called a backup and disaster recovery appliance. And what a backup and disaster recovery appliance, or a BDR, is, it conducts backups of your computer, and they're automatic. It conducts them every hour. So you never are going to lose more than an hour's worth of work. It backs your computer up every hour, but more so than that, it's really an appliance. So if your computer dies, your server dies, well, the appliance steps in and becomes your server. It becomes your computer. So you're not waiting to get hardware shipped from Dell. You're not waiting to go out and buy a new computer. The appliance steps in and literally becomes your computer for a period of time until you can get your real server or your real computer back operational. So, you know, you don't have to worry about, well, I've got my data on my jump drive, but I don't have anywhere to use it. I mean, I don't have a computer. So the appliance actually steps in and becomes your server, becomes your computer. And it also gives us the ability to turn your server on, to turn your computer on, and to get the data off of it from online or from the cloud should your building not be available. You know, if building burns down, well, we can still, within about an hour, we can turn your server on and get you connected to it, get you back into your accounting, back into your medical records software, back into your point-of-sale system, whatever the case may be, within an hour or two. So really not much downtime at all. In fact, the time to recover if you're using a backup and disaster recovery appliance is typically 1 to 2 hours, even if the building is no longer standing. I mean, even if you've had a tornado and literally the building is leveled, we can have you back operational within 1 to 2 hours. Now, there are some other things you have to think about if your building is really no longer standing. You obviously have to have a location to work out of. You have to have somewhere that you have internet, that kind of thing. But definitely if you have equipment failure, you'll be back up and operational in about an hour. And even if the building's not standing, we can still get you back up in an hour, 2 hours max, but that's provided that you have somewhere to work at, somewhere to work from. So that's definitely the best kind of backup that there is available nowadays. And we're going to give you some information at the end of the webinar how you can find out more about these backup and disaster recovery appliances. It really is something that's kind of new, but definitely the quickest time to recover and the shortest duration of not losing work. You know, you're not losing 8 hours worth of data because your computer died at the end of the day or your server died at the end of the day. The other thing that is really important for you to have is a written disaster recovery binder. And we're going to kind of go into what should be in that disaster recovery binder. One thing that's really important, though, is that hopefully multiple people in your organization can have a copy of this binder, and that it's not stored on site. I mean, definitely you can keep a copy of it in your office, but you also need a copy of it at, key personnel's homes, somebody keep it in their car, whatever the case may be. A written disaster recovery binder is really just a binder that contains a lot of information at your fingertips to utilize during a disaster. We actually have dealt with this with a number of clients, and honestly, when you have a major disaster, your building burned down last night, the nicest way I guess I can put it is you're not thinking rationally. You don't have time to go and try to sit at the insurance agent's office and figure out what your policy number is. You're more concerned about the tangible assets that were in your building that you no longer have, et cetera, et cetera. So your written disaster recovery binder, well, that kind of helps with that. I mean, you have that at your fingertips. You don't have to think. You know what to do because you've already planned it out. Like I said, you need to keep it with key personnel at their homes, somebody keep it in their car, whatever the case may be. Keep a copy at the office too, but you definitely want it available if you can't get to the office. And it needs to be updated, every 6 months or so, or when situations dictate. If you have key personnel who leave, well, you probably need to adjust your disaster recovery plan. If you get a new internet provider, you need to adjust your disaster recovery plan. Insurance policies change. You need to adjust your disaster recovery plan. It really needs to be reviewed and tested regularly. For most of our clients at SmartPath, we work with them and we will test their backup and disaster recovery of their workstations and their servers on a regular basis, but you also need to test the information in your binder, make sure that it's so accurate, that kind of thing, at least every 6 months. We'd like to do it every quarter if possible. Sometimes that's not feasible, but it's really best to do it every quarter. So what should your disaster recovery binder have in it? Well, a couple of things. You need to have a contact list and contact information for all of your employees. You have to know how to call your employees and tell them where you're going to assemble at. What are you going to do? What's your plan? So you need to have all of the current updated contact info for your employees. Definitely home phone numbers, cell phone numbers, and as email is more and more prevalent, especially on people's phones, their email addresses too. You need to have your contact information for all your service providers, your utilities, the electric company, the gas company, et cetera, including your account numbers. Again, if your building's not standing, you're not going to go be able to dig up your last electric bill to see what your account number is. So you need to get all of that information into your binder as well. Having those account numbers is vitally, vitally important. The plan for employee contact. Who is going to let all of the rest of the employees know what's going on, what the disaster is, that you're going to meet at the Holiday Inn or that you're going to meet at a library, a community room, whatever the case may be. Who is really in charge of contacting the employees? Without that, you're going to have just chaos, total chaos, because employees are going to be contacting each other and they're going to get details wrong as word spreads. You know how that works. It's better just to have a designated person to contact all of the employees and let them know what's going on. You need to have media contacts. So you need to have the information, the telephone numbers for the local radio stations, the newspaper, the local television station. You need to be able to get that information out quickly to the people who you service, whether it's patients, whether it's clients, whether it's whatever you call the people you service. You need to let them know how to get a hold of you and what's going on. You want business to continue on as normal as much as possible. You want revenue to continue coming in. So you need to have those media contacts assembled in your binder so you can quickly call them, let them know, how to get a hold of you, if they have service needs, et cetera, what they need to do. An emergency location, where are you going to meet? Where are you going to assemble your staff at? That kind of thing. There are a lot of I know in this area there's a lot of local community rooms and libraries and, Woodman of the World buildings, those kind of things that are open to the public to use in these kind of situations. Hotels are also very common emergency locations to set up temporary operations. But you need to think about what is your emergency location and where's that going to be. You need to have documentation of services that must continue. Now, when we say services that must continue, stop and think about your business and what you do and what is most vital that you continue to offer. Is it getting insurance companies billed? Is it sending bills out? And you need to even break that down a little further into what services need to continue within 24 hours, what services need to be operational and continuing within 3 days, within 7 days, et cetera, et cetera. So stop, think about all of those things, and what are the things that you provide your clients, your patients, whoever it may be, that you have to continue to provide them. You need a realtor contact to establish a temporary office location. Yeah, you can set up in a community room. You can set up at a hotel for a few days, but if your building's no longer standing, you're going to have to find permanent temporary office space until you can rebuild, until you can buy a new building, whatever the case may be. It's better to go on and have the number of a couple of realtors in your binder so you're not having to try to find a realtor to find you a temporary office while you're under the stress of not having a building anymore. You need to have an external notification list. Who outside of your company and outside of the media do you need to notify about the disaster, about what's gone on, and what your business continuation plan is? How are you going to continue operating? So who do you need to let know outside of your internal organization? You need all of your insurance policy information, and it's really important to have your agent name in there, but more so than that, having your policy numbers and having the claim hotline numbers. And, that's not only your business insurance, for your building, whatever the case may be, but that should also include your workers' comp, your errors and omissions policy information, et cetera, et cetera. All of that needs to be compiled into just a single sheet of paper and put that in your binder as well. Responsibility designation. Now, when we say responsibility designation, you need to define who in your organization is responsible for certain tasks during a disaster. Who is responsible for maintaining contact with the utilities to get temporary utilities set up? Who is responsible for trying to work with the insurance company when they send an adjuster down because your building is no longer there? You don't need to have an adjuster on the phone and just send the nearest person, who may be your receptionist, down to deal with the adjuster. You need to have that thought out well in advance. And again, the critical timeline. What do you need to happen within 24 hours, within 3 days, and within 7 days to continue your business? Do you need to be able to start billing insurance companies, sending bills out within 24 hours, begin seeing patients again or servicing clients again within 3 days, and be able to have full temporary operations set up somewhere within 7 days? That's different for every one of you, so there's no universal answer there. But your binder needs to have what has to happen within 24 hours, what needs to happen within 3 days, what needs to happen within 7 days. Those are all important things to be thinking about. Again, something we talked about earlier, but you don't really think of all the time, is what happens during the death of key personnel. That's definitely a possibility, and that is definitely would be considered a disaster for most businesses. So some things that are really common sense, but people oftentimes don't always think about, is travel plans. If you have a president and a vice president, or you have an owner and an operations manager, or you have a physician and an office manager, don't travel together. If you're going to have to fly somewhere, fly on 2 separate flights that arrive within an hour of each other. Try not to have to commute in the same vehicle together. God forbid something ever happen, but one of the main things that hurt businesses, and this has been studied by multiple insurance companies and multiple researchers and professionals, one of the main things that just hurt companies so bad and sometimes put them into bankruptcy or force them to close is the death of multiple key personnel. Having separated travel plans kind of takes care of that a little bit, so be thinking about that. You also need to have thorough job descriptions and know what all of your key personnel do. Is the person who does your accounting, are they also the person who is issuing payroll checks? You need to know that, and you need to have that documented. So if that person's no longer here, they're not alive anymore, they're not available, somebody knows what it is that they do and what skills you need to find when you find temporary help. You need a plan for who's going to perform key functions to continue business should a death occur of key personnel. You don't want one person to be able to sign checks and that person no longer be here because they were in a fatal car accident. Who can do payroll? Does more than one person need to know how to do payroll? Who needs to be on the signature card at the bank for your checking account, your savings accounts, maybe your business safety deposit box, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to plan for those things and figure out how is business going to continue if you aren't in the picture anymore, if the owner of the company isn't in the picture anymore. You know, here at SmartPath, Christy, my wife, and I own the company, but we travel separately frequently. It is a bit inconvenient, but that's something that you have to think about. You also need a list of contacts who have experience with the organization and could possibly temporarily fill those roles. So if you have somebody in your accounting department who's retired, well, keep their contact information because you very well may need to bring them back in for a month or two should you have a death of a key personnel in the accounting department. Now, who could do your day-to-day functions of your organization, and fill each of those roles? So try to keep a list of contacts of people who have experience with your business, your practice, and temporarily fill those roles should that need arise. The other thing that really you have to think about with data security, and we're seeing more and more of, are security breaches. You hear this all the time, and you hear about it at Target, and you hear about the Home Depot breach. Everybody heard about the Sony hack in the movie The Interview. Well, what a lot of people don't realize are that the people who are most of the time the victims of security breaches and data breaches aren't Home Depot, aren't Target, aren't TJ Maxx. You hear about those a lot because they're huge, and the people that they affect when they get breached, well, it affects millions and millions of consumers. But far and away, small businesses and businesses with 1 to 10 people are highly targeted for security breaches. I mean, those are the bread and butter of the people in foreign countries, the hacker groups, et cetera, who want your data. It is the small business. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that they would love 10 million credit cards from TJ Maxx or Home Depot, but they want the 7 people that you have in your QuickBooks payroll, they want their IDs just as bad as they want those Home Depot credit card numbers, and as much as they want to release who knows what from Sony. So, that's something that you have to be concerned about. A security breach is really defined as anybody gaining access to your building, but especially to your computers, without authorized permission. You think about hackers, and you think about viruses, and you think about those kind of things, but did you also think about that a lot of security breaches happen internally? You have somebody in housekeeping who suddenly wants to know how much that their coworker is making, and they see a computer, they're a little computer literate, they see a computer in the accounting office that's logged in, and the person uses QuickBooks. Well, they're familiar with QuickBooks. They know how to get in and look at your payroll. So those kind of situations, they happen all the time, and you all of the people on this webinar, the small businesses and the mid-sized businesses, really are a target for security breaches. So if you do have a security breach, because it does happen, and like I said, you are a common target, some things you have to think of is who needs to be notified of a breach internally. So if you find out that you do have a data breach, credit card numbers have been leaked, or possibly payroll information, social security numbers who have been leaked. First of all, what's your chain of command? Who needs to be notified internally about those situations? That's number one. That's very, very important. So you got to think about that, have that in your disaster recovery binder too. I understand a lot of you all are small businesses. You may have 3 people, 4 people. Well, you still need to figure out that if the lowest person on the totem pole discovers that somebody has accessed data without permission, well, who are they to notify? Do they notify their supervisor, or do they notify the owner of the company? You need to think about that, and you need to have that planned out. What's the policy for notifying your clients in the event of a breach? You store credit card numbers because you automatically bill your clients an amount every month on their credit card. Those credit card numbers get leaked. Well, you're required by law to notify your clients, to purchase credit protection for your clients, et cetera, et cetera. Typically, though, you need to have a policy for how you're going to notify them. You probably need to get your attorney involved at that point in time. It starts getting really, really messy when you tell people that you have lost their personal information. It's an ugly situation. People do not like that at all, and you need to have a clearly defined policy that you stick to for notifying your clients of a data breach. And what kind of training do you need to offer your staff to prevent security breaches? You know, what kind of training do you need to offer to the person who processes those credit cards every month in terms of keeping that data safe? What kind of training do you need to offer your staff about knowing that it's not okay to go in the accounting department and get on Facebook on their computers? Yeah, you know, they were bored and they had 30 minutes before they went home. They'd done all their work. They found an open computer, went and got on Facebook. Well, that's not okay. So what kind of training do you need to offer your staff to prevent those kind of security breaches? That is, that's something that you got to think about. So as I mentioned, we're seeing more and more and more security breaches of small to mid-sized businesses, the 1-person, the 5-person companies, the 25-person companies, and believe it or not, we're seeing a lot of those breaches here in the western Kentucky, southern Illinois area. That's happening, and you are definitely a target. So you need to know that, and you need to be wary of that. That's arguably possibly a bigger danger than an earthquake or a tornado. It's happening all the time. You know, there's some other common things that you obviously need to do. Number one is having a good IT support partner like SmartPath to make sure that you have a good firewall, that your antivirus is up to date, that if you use remote access to gain access to a computer at a remote location, that that's secure. Nobody can eavesdrop as it used to be with the phone system. Those kind of things. That's obviously very important as well. So all of that being said, we've talked about backup and, you know, how to back up. What's the best method of backup? What are some pitfalls of the various kinds of backup? Well, we can help you with that. We can help you make sure that your network is back up and operational within 1 to 2 hours of a disaster. A lot of times and we hear all the time, it's just not possible that I could be back operational within 2 hours of my building burning down. Yes, it really is. And so we can help you with that if you need. We can also help you construct a thorough disaster recovery plan. So that binder that we talked about, all that information that you need to have and need to have at your fingertips when disaster does happen, we understand that can be kind of daunting to come up with, kind of daunting to do. We can help you construct that disaster recovery plan fairly easily, and we're happy to do that. We can also help you train your staff and write your security policies in case you ever do have a security breach. If you're in the medical industry, we've got some medical clients on the webinar today. If you have a HIPAA breach, if you have a privacy breach, and in addition, when we help you write your security policies and train your staff on security breaches, you're automatically able to get $100,000 in financial protection to help offset some of the costs of purchasing credit protection for your clients, notifying your clients, attorney's costs, forensic costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not cheap. That stuff is not cheap. So if you let us help you train your staff, write your policies, that's something that we're able to offer you, is that security protection. There's a link at the bottom of the slide that's on your screen. You're also going to get that link in a follow-up email to this webinar. You can go to that link, and that's a little survey about the webinar today, what you got out of it. But also, if you do want some help with those kind of things, you can let us know. We'll be in contact with you, and we can really take that off your back. We can do that for you. So I appreciate all of your time today. Again, I'm Willie Kearns. I own SmartPath Technologies. We are the premier IT service provider for small to mid-sized businesses in Western Kentucky. Really, there's only 3 or 4 companies in the area who offer what we do, and we pride ourselves on offering concierge-level services. It's kind of the difference in staying at a Days Inn and staying at a Hilton. Our clients are very well taken care of, and we monitor things. We know what's going on. We do what we do, and we do it very well. My contact information is also there on the screen, my email address, our website, which is www.smartpathtech.com, and our phone number, 270-205-4709. That's 270-205-4709. My email address, first initial, last name, W. Kearns, at smartpathtech.com. You can get me there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I will always be happy to help you with anything that we can. We're running right up on our time limit right now, so if you all do have any questions or you want to follow up on anything, again, I'm going to leave this contact info up on the screen for you, but you're also going to be receiving an email including that link that we provided for you, so that if you do need some extra help or want to find out some more information, you can do that. We've also been recording this webinar today, and it's going to be available on demand. So if you want to maybe get your boss involved, get your ownership involved, et cetera, we're going to be providing you the way that you can go back and replay this webinar as time permits for you and for your management, for your ownership. I appreciate all of you all joining in today. Like I said, we've got a really packed house. That's awesome. I love seeing a packed house on webinars. That's just a wonderful thing. Again, keep us in mind for any IT needs that you have, but especially if you are concerned about those security breaches, if you are worried about your disaster recovery plan, do you even have a good disaster recovery plan, that kind of thing, well, then keep us in mind. I'm going to leave our contact information up here on the screen for just a little bit longer. I do appreciate all of you all joining in today. If you ever have any questions at all, I will be happy to help you. Just shoot me an email, give me a call, and that's what we do. That's what I do every day. I'm happy to do it. I appreciate everybody joining in today, and I hope you've got something out of it. We'll be offering some more great webinars coming up in the next couple of months. You'll get information about those. I certainly hope that you're able to join those with us as well. And I hope that you have a great rest of the day and a productive rest of the day and get out there and make some money. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.